So, in this lecture we will discuss one important object oriented paradigm is called the inheritance. We have discussed the encapsulation, then inheritance is the another important object oriented paradigm. In today's lecture we will discuss about the inheritance. So, first we should learn about the concept and then how this concept is basically implementable in Java program. Now, inheritance is very common concept, is a biological term although, and you know exactly the inheritance means basically inheritance a children inherits from its parents or whatever it is there. So, the concept it is like this, and then single inheritance means if it inherits from only one entity, and multiple inheritance means if one entity inherits from the multiple entities. So, concept it is there the both single as well as multiple inheritance, and then inheritance can be also hierarchically with multiple levels. So, multi-level inheritance. So, children inherits from the parent, grandchildren inherits from the children like this one. So, these are the concept actually very common it is there, but so far the object is concerned the concept it is also there. Here for example, if we consider animal is a kind of object, then animal has the different other type of objects. So, herbivore, carnivore like this one. So, here animal is a general, whereas herbivore is a special, and if we see the lion and hyena they are more special. So, from generalized to more specialization is the concept of inheritance, and this is called the EJ concept. That means, lion is an animal, hyena is an animal. So, is a EJ concept. So, they are followed, they are basically related to the EJ relationship, and there may be many hierarchy, that means that hierarchy means it is in the different level. So, this is the concept of there. Now, here inheritance in Java is very useful for many reasons. The first reason is that using inheritance we can create given a class another class. So, the concept of this thing is very important here. Now, so this concept is basically given a class we usually call it is a super class, and if we can create another class from this class, then this is called the subclass. As an example, here we can see vehicle is a super class, whereas car and the truck are the two subclasses. Similarly, fire truck is another subclass of the class truck. So, here truck is the superclass of the subclass fire truck. So, this basically says that we can create the number of classes inheriting from its superclasses. Now, what is the concept of inheriting? Okay, we will come to this discussion about the what basically a subclass will inherit from its parent class. Now, this inheritance concept is very important in Java program, it is because reusability. So, if we have a class say truck, then we can share this code of the class truck, and then we can implement some other code in fire truck. So, it is basically code shareability or the reusability, even the maintainability, the code maintainability is very important aspect which can be done using the concept of inheritance. Now, how the inheritance of a class is possible? So, there is a syntax in Java program, the inheritance in a class is possible by means of one keyword called the extends. So, here the class, this is the name of the subclass which basically you want to inherit, and this is the name of the superclass that from where you have to inherit, and this is basically the code of the subclass in addition to the code or the method or members which is there in this subclass. So, here basically all the codes which is there in superclass is also accessible here in this method. So, this way basically the idea of the code reusability come into the picture. So, this is the idea about that these things can be done using inheritance. Now, let us see some example, so that we can understand about this idea about the inheritance. Very simple example that we are going to discuss about. So, suppose there is a class called the 2D point. So, 2D point is a class, and we want to inherit another class called the 3D point. This means that 2D point, if it has some members and methods, then all these member and method may be is available to this 3D point, or we can say that some method can be overridden, that means it can be redefined in this method. Now, let us see one example. So, here is basically the statement of a class point 2D, it has two members x and y and display is the method. So, these are the composition of this class. Now, here point 3D which basically inherits point, this is basically point 3D inherits point 2D. So, it is, so it should be corrected, this is point 2D. So, the point 3D extends point 2D, that means point 3D inherits from the class point 2D, and here we can see we declare integer z as a new elements on it. This means that for this class point 3D all these things which is there also use accessible here. So, this means that x, y and z all the three members are available to this or members of this class point 3D. However, again you can note it, the display method which is there in point 3D also it is there. However, the method which is defined here and there they are different. This means that this display overrides the superclass method display. Now, on the other hand, if we write say display 1 and display 2, then the two methods are there, and here with this change what is the idea is that like x y is available to this class point 3D, similarly display 1 is also accessible to this method this one. So, this basically if point 2D is a generalization concept, is a general, then point 3D is a special one, that means it has many more things other than the point 2D itself. So, this is the concept of inheritance, and this is obviously an example of single inheritance, and as it is a very simple example we usually call it a simple inheritance example. Okay, so, this is the idea about the simple inheritance. And here is the main method that you can declare. Now, if you can look at this method little bit carefully, you will be able to see these are the objects that we have created for 2D class point 2D and point 3D, and these are the basically initialization. Similarly, here the initialization of the point 3 there is basically point 2. Okay. So, this is basically initialization of point 2. Now, here if you see in P 2 being a point in class basically point 3D, x y is accessible. So, this is the idea is that okay, by means of by virtue of inheritance all the members and methods are accessible with the object of subclass. So, this is an example of the simple inheritance that we have discussed. Now, we quickly discuss about what are the different type of inheritance that is possible in Java program. Now, this is an example of single inheritance. So, if we can derive a subclass from a superclass, this is a simple inheritance we can say. Other than simple inheritance, there may be more than one class can be derived from the same class. So, it is called the multiple single inheritance. For example, here subclass 1 is derived from the superclass, subclass 2 is also derived from the superclass, subclass 3. So, this is another type of inheritance, and again a subclass can be derived from a superclass, another subclass can be derived from another subclass, this also. So, it is called the multi-level single inheritance. Other than this multi-level single inheritance, there is a concept of called the multiple inheritance. Here for an example, this class inherit from this and this. So, if a class inherits from the two classes, then it is the example of multiple inheritance. And here is basically the hybrid example. Here for example, this class inherit from this one, this. So, this is a single. However, this class inherit from this one. So, it is called the hybrid inheritance. That means, both single, simple as well as multiple inheritance are there. Now, however, so far Java programming is concerned, all inheritance are not possible. Rather, in Java we have only single inheritance, multiple single inheritance, multi-level single inheritance are possible, whereas the other two are not possible. Java does not support multiple inheritance as well as hybrid inheritance. Now, let us have little bit bigger example about inheritance, maybe multiple multi full single inheritance we can say. Here for example, person is a general class and then student is another subclass which can be derived from the person. Similarly, employee is also another subclass can be derived from the person. Now, what is the actual idea about this inheritance that can be understand about it? Here basically person may have some data as well as method of its. Here for example, these are the different composition of the person. Now, let us come to the student, it has another right and this is the another. Now, what it does mean that that the student class has all these things in addition to this one. Similarly, employee class has all these things in addition to this one. So, for an employee class all these things are available, for a student class all these things are available. So, this is the idea about that. Okay, by means of inheritance all the codes which is there, for example, these methods are nothing but code can be accessible to this one, all the codes which is there also accessible to the employee class. So, code reusability is there. So, by means of inheritance we can have this one. Now, here quick Java programming features programming concept of this one, as an example we can say about say class person that we have declared, whatever the idea that we have mentioned here written in a Java code like. Okay, you can relate to the pictures that we have shown in the last slide is basically related to this one. This is the class person is a general class and now student class can be defined like. So, having this person is okay to us, then we can have the student class which basically extends person class. So, it is there. Next, so this way the person class can be declared about, and now here you can see here the print data which is declared in this method here is also used here to print the biodata of the student class like this one. Now, so this is the class student which has been inherited from the class person. Now, likewise we can have another inheritance, the employee also can be inherited from the class person which basically has this one, and whatever the different methods are there we can declare here. So, this way the class student and class employee is more what is called the code than the class person itself, and inheritance is the utilization of this one. So, once all the classes are used, then in your main class we can use those things and you can process them. Here for an example, we use the main method where the different objects of the class can be declared individually as if they are the new class of their own. So, this way the single inheritance is possible. Now, the concept of inheritance is like this, is very simple, not very difficult to understand. That is why Java makes the thing so simple, only allowing single inheritance, and this inheritance can be gone into another level. The same thing, if I say suppose regular employee extends employee, then permanent employee, temporary employee extends employee. So, the other two different classes can be inherited from the employee after the employee is inherited from person like this one. So, this way extension has no limit, to any level we can go. Now, here is another good example so that you can understand about it. So, there are many geometrical objects. So, all objects are of general type and then they can be of special type. So, for example, 1D object, 2D object, 3D object. On the other hand, if we consider the 3D object, they are again different type, 2D object different type, 1D object also different type. Now, further what is called the specialization also can be done. For example, 2D object can be of the further specialization like triangle, quadrilateral and so on. Quadrilateral may be another specialization, rectangle, parallelogram, this one. Now, this kind of inheritance hierarchy. Now, if you want to create a program for manipulating all geometrical objects. So, first we can create the geo objects which basically has all the common attributes in it. Then whatever the special attributes slowly can be added into its inherited classes, and then finally, the classes at the bottom level can be obtained. They are basically the more refined or more specialized class that needs to solve your problem. So, this is the concept that is followed there, and now okay, you can write the programs for implementing all the type of objects that we have listed in this taxonomy. So, this concept can be extended like this one. Now, we will discuss about one concept, the method overloading. In the example of point 3D inherited from the point 2D, we have discussed about method overriding. That means, there is a method display which is basically defined in both the classes. If we declare a method which is already defined in its superclass, then the method called overriding method. So, that means, you have to override the method. So, this concept is called the method overriding. So, method overriding, it is basically required that the method that we have declared in a superclass can sometimes needs to be redefined here. So, if we want to do the redefinement, then we can do it like this one. So, this is again continuation of the previous example that we have discussed about. Here the display method which is declared here, this display basically override this display, and then we can use it here in this program, as we can see it is here. So, this method as we can see here, this method as we can see here. So, point 2D P is a point of 2D class and point 3D Q is a point of 3D class, and here you can see X is another class which we have created, which basically upcasting. That means, Q is a point of 3D, but we can cast into 2D using this kind of special features are there. So, typecasting we will discuss details later on. So, then X dot display, then this basically we will call the display method of this class, although in Q it is overridden. So, it is like this way we can have the access of this one. This concept is called the dynamic binding. So, dynamic binding is the one kind of runtime what is called the scope rule. So, scope rule will be decided from which, because if we cast with others, then binding will be different and so on. So, this dynamic binding will be demonstrated in our practical class, so that we can understand these features more clearly. So, this is the idea about method overriding, it is there. Now, regarding this inheritance concept, one thing that we should note that a subclass object can refer a superclass variable or method if it is not overridden. That means, all the methods and variables are accessible to the subclass if it is not defined in that class itself. On the other hand, a superclass, that means, the reverse is not possible. That means, a superclass cannot access any variable or any method which is defined in the subclass. So, one way traffic it is actually. So, we can access from the subclass platform only, but from the superclass platform, other than the method or variables defined in the superclass, we cannot access anything from the subclass. Now, there is another very important concept, it is called the super keyword, which basically used for many purpose. So, super keyword has the many implication in this. Using this super keyword in Java, one can refer immediate parent class variables, they are basically instance variable it is there. Super also, this keyword also can be used to invoke parent class method, and super also can be used to invoke parent class constructor. So, there are many use of the super class. In our subsequent slides, we will see how the super class can service the three different facilities: referencing variables, referencing method and referencing the constructor. Those are there in super class. Now, this is an example. If you can look at this example little bit carefully, you will be able to understand that this is basically an example using the super keyword, where we can refer parent class instance variable. Now, let us see in this example we can see this color is a variable which is declared in a class animal, and dog is another class which extends animal, and in the dog class we can declare again the color variable. So, this color is basically overridden variable, that means, this color and this color they have the two different scope. Now, here if we see in the super class, the variable color is white, value is white, whereas in dog it is black. Now, in the print color method, which is basically new methods in the class dog, it basically if we refer this color, then this refer to this color. But if we want to mention that this color I want to mention which belong to the super, then I should write super dot color. So, this super dot color will refer to this value, whereas this color will refer to this one. Now, having this kind of concept, now let us see, this is basically on the main program. So, here D, an object of type this class is, and then D dot print color we will call it, and whenever it call it, then it will basically show the output which will look like this. So, output is okay because of this first print color black, because this one, and then super color white. So, these are the two output is there. So, this is the concept that super keyword is used to reference the parent class instance variable. Now, this has another also use, it is called the like the referencing the parent class variable, the super also can be used to reference the parent class method. The method is, the concept is same as the previous one. Now, again look at this example. Here the animal is another class which has the method eat. Again in the dog, which is an inherited from the subclass of the superclass animal, it also declare eat. This means that this method is basically an overriding method than this one. So, this method has its own which has the scope within the class dog, and this method has this kind of print statement. Now, bark is the totally new method belong to this, and work is also another method which is defined this. So, bark and work are the newly added method in the class dog. Now, wherever now you see the work method which is a new method in the class dog, it call this one. Now, super dot eat, you can understand what it does mean. It means that this is the method of this, whereas bark is the as usual because there is no resolution, and then eat is basically this one eat. So, this basically resolve the namespace. So, eat method belongs to this if it is prefixed by super dot, and these are the method it is there. So, using this super method we can refer that this method belongs to whether it is a superclass method or belongs to the subclass method if it is overwritten. And this is an example of this one, very simple, you can understand. D, the dog object is created, and D dot work if we call, you can guess that what output it should give it you. Obviously, you can check that the output that it should give you this one. So, dog work super dot eat, it is basically eating, then bark it will barking, and then eat again eating bread. So, this kind of output you can see it if you run this program. So, this concept is the concept of that using superclass we can resolve the parent class method than the base class method. Now, this is another example of use of superclass is basically invoking the parent class constructor. We will use this kind of construct frequently in our subsequent program. So, we should understand it very carefully. Again this is a superclass, this has one constructor animal. So, this is the superclass constructor. Dog is the another class, is an inherited from the superclass in animal. So, it is a subclass of animal, and here if you see dog is a constructor, and this dog constructor we use the super. This means that if we use this, say this dog will also call this superclass constructor, that is then animal is called here. So, is basically if you writing this one means it is a superclass constructor is called here, and then finally dog his own method. So, this means that in this constructor we has the two print statement, this and this as well as this one. Now, if we run this test case and then if we run this one, then you can see that this kind of output you can get it, animal is created and dog is created because of these two things are there. So, this is the concept of the use of super, here the super keyword. So, that if we write super within parenthesis, this indicates that it will basically call the parent class constructor. So, super, okay, we can see that super is a very important keyword. We have used similar kind of keyword this earlier, and then another keyword new also earlier. So, those new, this and super are very important keyword. We will understand also few more keywords later on. Now, this is another example of invoking parent class constructor using the super. This example similar to the previous example was pretty simple. Here you can see point 2D is the super class, 3D is an sub class, and here whenever we create a constructor point 3D, we will construct this one, that means we can. Now, here again you can note that in point 2D there are two constructors. So, super if we call, then which constructor it will refer to? Actually, it depends on what kind of arguments are there. If we call this kind of argument, then this is basically reflect to that constructor which matches its argument. For example, here super is a default constructor. On the other hand, we could write that super using these are the say 3 different value, then that constructor will be called here. So, it depends on using the passing proper argument which matching to that constructor, when the super will refer to that constructor. So, this is the idea about the super constructor is there, and whenever we use this kind of inheritance, one very important concept is that dynamic method resolution. So, this concept is basically runtime polymorphism. If we create many object, finally, which belongs to the method belongs to which object, it little bit confusing. So, that confusion can be avoided by means of if you can understand this concept little bit carefully. Now, one example can be given, so that you can understand about that which binding, that means which are the method reflected to a particular call. Now, we can consider this example here. So, bike is a super class, the splendor is another sub class which has the run method. You can see run is overriding method here, and after this declaration of the two classes super class and sub class, we have the main method declared here. Okay, so, it is very simple. So, B 1 is an object of type this class, that means, if we run b dot run, so it will run this method. On the other hand, here bike B 2, that means, we create an object of type B 2 and B 2 dot run, the resolution is quite easy that this method will be run in this case. On the other hand, now come here, this is little bit tricky. Now, here we create an object by means of this memory allocator, then spender, but actually we cast it and then we stored it B 3, but it is type of the bike object. And then if we call this B 3 dot run, so then which method will be called here? Actually, in this case, as it is the object of splendor, although it is B 3 run, we should not confuse that this B 3 as the object of class bike, then this run is this one, it is not like that, as it is basically splendor. So, it is run. This means that dynamically, so B 3 dot run is changed from this method to this method. So, it is called the runtime polymorphism, and it has many utilization. Those utilization we will discuss when we discuss about the packages and others. So, if we have to store many objects in an array and then objects of different type, then better idea is that array can be declared of the superclass object type, and then if it is declared superclass, any subclass object can be put into that array and it can be processed in irrespective of the different objects. So, this is the one good example of the runtime polymorphism in the Java. Now, this is another example is you can guess that what output it will give it to for you. So, this is a super class, this is a derived class, inherited class, subclass, and this is the main method, and you can understand that how it can. So, you just look at this point and then you can try to give the answer, then you can understand that whether you have understood it or not. So, if you run it this program and it will give this kind of output, you can say, and you can resolve it how it is basically giving this kind of output. So, this basically the idea about that if inheritance is there, you have to little bit clear about that how the different method is called there. Now, I will quickly discuss about two more important concepts in Java. One is called the abstract class and another is the final class. A class can be declared as an abstract. If you declare an abstract class, then its all method and all data member also can be declared an abstract actually. So, abstract class is basically the class which does not have any method to be defined clearly, or the method can be kept as a void, that means without any code. Now, abstract class as it is, it does not have any code or any other things. So, that any object of that class cannot be created. So, it has certain properties like an abstract class, it is declared by means of a specifier is called the abstract, and it can have again abstract method and non-abstract method. All the method that we have discussed so far non-abstract. If a method is prefixed with abstract keyword, then it is called the abstract method. It cannot be instantiated. This means that no object can be created for an abstract class, and it can have final method. If an abstract class has a final method, then that object cannot, that method cannot be overridden in its derived class. So, this is the idea about the abstract class, and then so abstract class is like this. So, if we can declare a method, no object is can be created, but it can be used to derive many classes from it. It is basically gives a template. Template means this is a generalization concept, that this one whose ultimate implementation will be done when we derive the subclass. Then the final keyword, is very one is a strict keyword. We can say that if we can declare a final, then this final class cannot be used for inheritance. So, no class can be derived from the final class, that means final class cannot be a super class. And in addition to the declaration of a class as a final, we can declare any variable, any method in a class as a final also. If we declare a variable as a final, so that variable cannot be overridden in any derived class, and if a method is declared as a final, so same method cannot be overridden in any class objects. So, final in the sense final that it is basically no more implementation in any derived class is possible. Now, here is an example. Here we can see the class bike is declared as a final. This means that this will give an error, because it is not permissible. So, this is an error. Okay, so, we have discussed about the basic concepts that is related to the inheritance of classes in Java programs. Now, there are many more questions that can be answered in subsequent classes. For example, can you inherit a class from other class which is defined in other package? Now, the here concept of package first should be learned, so that we can give answer to this question. And then information hiding, that is on another pending job that we will discuss in our next lecture hours. Thank you very much.